Hello, my name is Brooklyn Newby and I will be presenting a genogram. As we know, the genogram is a graphic representation of the family tree to lay out relationships between individual units in the family system. This is a concept created by Bowen to help counselors or social workers understand their client's background, quality of family relationships, and family patterns by using a visual representation. I will be going through my mother's side of the family, the maternal name being Kennington. So let's start at the top here. I included 4 generations in my genogram because there's a good example of a lack of differentiation between my great-grandmother and my great-aunt or her daughter. So we have Leone, who is my great-grandma. From what I've heard from my great-aunt Amy, she favored her sons, or Leone did. This formed a hostility that Amy carried with her for her entire life. Even after having her own family and her mother dying, Amy still allowed that rift to affect her. Helen, my grandma, also saw that her mother favored her brothers over her sisters, but she didn't let that affect her the same way that Amy did. Amy also showed signs of jealousy towards Helen because she was able to hold a career, which Amy saw as a great sign of success. Helen wishes that she had a better relationship with her sister, but Amy always kept sort of an emotional distance from her. So, like I said before, I would consider Amy to be an example of someone with a lack of differentiation. That's also a concept created by Bowen, and it can be defined as the ability to separate feelings and thoughts. Those who have a lack of differentiation when asked a question or asked to think are flooded with emotion, which impedes their ability to think logically. They may also have a difficult time separating their feelings from other people's feelings. I imagine growing up, Amy felt a lot of insecurity, wondering why her mother wasn't showing her similar affection as she did her siblings. This insecurity most likely never left, but she changed her feelings more towards anger and frustration towards her mother, which defined her mom as a bad person in her head. From experiences of talking to Amy, she is unable to think about her mother without feeling insecure and angry, showing a lack of differentiation. So let's go down the line here. My grandma Helen married my grandpa Craig. Together they had 6 children. Unfortunately, one of them died a few days after being born. My family is very quiet and doesn't show a lot of emotion. This is a trait that has been passed down through the generations. An example of this is when my grandma lost her child. My grandma has said to my mom that she needed someone during that time of her child's death, but my grandpa, having an avoidant attachment style, was closed off. And so there wasn't really any emotional support for anyone within the family, which is really sad, and I'm sure my grandpa needed emotional support too. He just didn't know how to get it or didn't think he needed it. So my mom's the youngest and she has 4 older siblings. She is closest to her sister Elise, who is a decade older than her. Elise never married, but she didn't let that hold her back from moving away from her home to Las Vegas and starting a career as a teacher. She expressed to me that she will forever be grateful to having moved away from her family because she was able to find herself by living independently. My mom has 1 brother named Robert who lives in Texas with his wife, and they are now empty nesters. And then we have my aunt Lori, who has unfortunately had a lot of trouble in her life. She's the second youngest, and when she was 19, she was engaged for the first time. My mom said she was very eager to be the first one married, and although that engagement didn't last, she soon found another man to marry. I never met this man because after they had 4 kids, they were divorced. And I don't know my cousins very well, but I understand that they've had similar struggles, having also experienced divorce and drug abuse. And my Aunt Lori is also suspected to have a history of drugs, reported by my Aunt Elise. The main thing I investigated while doing my genogram was my Aunt Teresa. She is the oldest of the Kennington children and still lives with her parents in American Fork. Growing up with her as my aunt, I have seen a lot of insecurity in her. She apologizes a lot for anything, and she just seems more sheepish in her actions. And my mom says that she seems to have given up on life, which is really sad. She, like Elise, has never been married, although there is Brad. Brad is practically my uncle. He visited my mom when I was born in the hospital, and he's just always been there. He also lives with Teresa and my grandparents, but the question is who is he and why is he living there? My mom said that him and Teresa used to be romantically involved, but she doesn't know their status right now because Teresa is very private. But what is understood is that Brad has severe depression, and that's why he lives with my family, and my grandparents agreed to give him a place to stay. Along with the depression, Brad has anger problems and can be emotionally abusive towards Teresa, which you can see in the lines on my genogram. I first realized this myself a few years ago while I was in the car with Teresa and Brad going to In-N-Out to get food for my family. I don't remember what was said, but Brad snapped at Teresa and snatched the bag of food out of her hands, and I was shocked. From what I knew growing up, Brad was a kind man. I know he loves me and my sisters, but he does have some deep-rooted problems. My mom and Elise noted that in addition to being emotionally abusive towards Teresa, he has been very passive-aggressive towards my mother, or my grandmother, I mean. He helps to maintain the yard and at her gentle requests. I say gentle because she's literally a sweet 92-year-old woman, and I don't think she can give non-gentle requests. He has been very hostile towards her. My grandfather, he's completely oblivious to all of this because he's near death, and he has always seen Brad as someone he cares for. My dad also expresses dislike towards Brad. He sees him as a man who's not part of the family but has a close relationship with all of his children, which makes my dad really uncomfortable. So then we have my immediate family. Although my dad is a married-in family member to the Kenningtons, he too has more of an avoidant attachment style. My dad doesn't show a lot of emotion unless it is anger when expressing frustration with work. Anger isn't scary to feel because it's powerful, and sadness is often under anger, but I don't know what my dad's feeling 99.9% of the time. My mom doesn't express a lot of emotion either, but in the past few years we have been more vulnerable with each other, which has strengthened our relationship, which is awesome. But growing up was difficult. I often felt isolated and misunderstood with the fear of opening up to my family because that wasn't the culture. I am the second oldest of 4 girls, and we are all 4 years apart. And I would consider my relationship with my sister stable. We haven't always gotten along, but that's the same with most, if not all, siblings. As I've grown up, I've been more in tune with my feelings and less scared to talk about them with my family. This has created a good relationship with my sisters, but mostly individual relationships, because when we are all together, it does seem like the culture of being distant with each other is reverted back. So, as I said previously, the purpose of a genogram is to outline a visual representation of someone's background, quality of family relationships, and family patterns. So, from my creation of a genogram, I have been able to see that there has been an apparent transmission of emotional avoidance within my family, that I have a lot more women in my family than men, which is similar to my dad's side of the family. Fun fact. I wouldn't consider my family or the relationships in my family to be low quality, but there is a lack of bonding between individuals. It does seem like those who are more similar tend to band together. This is evident with my mother and her sister Elise, and I would lump myself in with them too. Also, my older sister Devin and my sister right after me, Michaela, are fairly similar and seem to band together in group family settings. And although I'm not a professional assessing my family system, it was cool, and I do appreciate being able to learn and understand more of my family dynamics. Thanks.